Something that we need to be aware of is the dialogue and the myths that have already been perpetuated, that already kind of surround the issue of the use of words, the relationship of words and histories, and in particular issues regarding relative power and race. We need to be aware that the myth of the white savior is very, very much a part of our cultural history, and that these myths have been a large part of the rhetoric justifying some of the more horrifying chapters of both world history, but also I'd say in particular American history. Part of why I think we need to be aware of some of those meta myths is that even if our own actions are informed by a completely different set of motivations, even if they do not really in spirit coincide with these bits of cultural mythology, those bits of cultural mythology have centuries of traction in our consciousness, centuries of traction in the consciousness of the people that we're talking to. And if we are proposing something that in spirit, in what's driving us, what's motivating us, is provocative, is new, is revolutionary, but the external manifestations of it, the gestures of it, fit into one of these well-established stories, that's how they're going to be interpreted. And that is the effect, the primary effect that they're going to have. Now, this to me is particularly pertinent right now, because just when you thought we might have made some progress on the idea of the white Superman, the idea of those poor, primitive, simple but noble people that need us Anglo-Europeans to come in and bail them out, just when you think that we've actually maybe grown up a little bit, we have the last 10 years of public rhetoric where Noble Savage is enthusiastically endorsed by presidents, by pundits, by near the entirety of our media, and in particular the media that is supposed to be informative rather than merely entertaining. We have resurgences of this myth in our entertainment as well. I mean, as per the topic of the video that I'm linking in the description box. At a time when we are up to our eyeballs in Noble Savage and White Man's Burden 2.0, revamped for the digital age, I am very, very hesitant to put out anything that could reinforce that, or, more to the point, that could be interpreted as being part of that. Part of my motivation there is that I don't want to be participating in that kind of narrative. I don't want to be contributing to that. But the other part is that if I am asking my audience to adopt a challenging idea, or a provocative idea, or a new idea, at least new to me, I want to make sure that they have the chance to actually understand that they are being asked to evaluate something new, rather than being presented with more of the same, more of the same. It's going to all but completely sabotage my efforts to provoke transformation if what people see, if the easiest way to respond to what I am putting forward is to place it on the shelf next to, well, things like Rudyard Kipling's White Man's Burden poem, Fraser's Golden Bough, or other bits of well, Eurocentric conquest mythology. That's one part of the problem, one part of my objection. And you notice here that I'm not disparaging intent at all. I am not disparaging intent. I'm talking about effect. I'm talking about the impact, and the kind of impact that our actions have. The other side of this is that when we're talking about the word nigger, we're talking about a word that is historically associated with a kind of marginalization that is outside my experience. That is not a word that has been used to marginalize me. It is not a word that has been used to marginalize my ancestry in such a way that it has contemporary consequences, and that word sounds like an echo of those consequences. We need to understand that there are different kinds of marginalization. Now, I am not a fan of atrocity comparisons. I am not a fan of saying, well, what was done here was so much worse than what was done somewhere else. Simply because I think these things are more productively evaluated by their quality, by the qualities, the properties that they impose, than some sort of quantification of misery. I don't think misery can be quantified. And more to the point, I think that comparing differing sorts of marginalization, different sorts of barbarism, different sorts of genocides is a reduction of all of them. It is a diminution of the impact of all of them, because it implies that whatever we decide the greatest atrocity is, we wind up saying that everything else is essentially a less version of that, a lesser version of that. And along the way, we wind up saying that, for all intents and purposes, there is only one kind of evil. There is only one kind of crime. And as such, there is only one kind of ramifications of a crime, consequences of a crime, that we need to deal with. There's only one kind of injury that we need to learn how to treat. And I don't think that's the case. I think that approach is dangerous. It is flat out dangerous. So I'm not a fan of atrocity comparisons. I think they need to be looked at on their own, as their own thing, and we need to be asking qualitative questions rather than quantitative questions. So when it comes to the word nigger, we're talking about a kind of isolation, marginalization, savagery, cruelty, and sadism that I have to understand academically. Now, I can analogize to forms of marginalization that I have experienced, but I'm analogizing. I'm empathizing, I'm not experiencing. There is a difference, and that difference needs to be recognized. But at the same time, that's mutual. That is mutual. An appreciation of the destructive use of the word nigger as an epithet does not impart to somebody the full experience of running into the words fag or the word freak. They are different experiences. There's a lot of overlap, and dialogue is absolutely necessary, but that dialogue can never happen if we start out, if we approach the issue with the presumption that they are the same. Dialogue occurs in contexts where there is a recognized difference, and hopefully in a context where those differences are points of mutual interest, and that there is a desire for mutual understanding and respect. I feel fully personally empowered to use the word freak however I like. That word is a significant part of my experience. That word is a significant facet of my history of interaction with other people. It is a word whose connotations I have experience with. And it is a word where, when used destructively, when there are maybe aftershocks, reverberations from the use of that word, I am part of that. It is a word where the person or body of persons who would take offense or experience injury at the casual use of that word includes me. And I guess just to kind of round out that illustration, that is a word that I use in a self-empowering way. I do self-describe as a freak. It's a statistically demonstrable fact. The negative connotations of it are a point of deep reflection. What they are saying, what people who use that word hurtfully are saying about themselves, and what they are saying about me and about the relations between, is something I think about quite a bit. But again, it is a word. It is a word whose potency is a part of my experience, and as such, I feel like it's a word that when I am using it, I am not risking collateral damage that does not involve myself. To kind of tie these all together, I think one of my concerns is using the word nigger as if it is uniformly descriptive of the experience of marginalization. That anyone who is marginalized has an experience of the impact of the word nigger. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think it is a referent to a specific kind of marginalization. The history of it refers to a specific kind of marginalization, and its contemporary use refers to a specific kind of marginalization. And while we are free to interact with language as we like, I am very, very hesitant to undertake any course of action that has potential negative impact when the people that are negatively impacted does not include me. I believe pretty adamantly in the necessity of variety. Adamantly in the necessity of variety of perspective. I can view a given approach to these kinds of questions that's very different from my own, and maybe even incompatible with my own, is still potentially valuable, if only for the dialogue that it provokes. It's not something I would do, and I suppose part of that is because my attention is elsewhere. My attention is on other fronts. I feel like I'm going after some similar issues, but going after them in very, very different ways. I don't see the methods as necessarily compatible, which doesn't mean that they can't be complementary. It just means I don't know that one person can be doing both. I guess to wrap this up, what it really comes down to is that I just don't want the message to be lost in the mode of delivery. And I want to avoid trying to address problems in our culture for which our culture already has a response. You know? I don't want to be applying the antibiotic that I know for a fact the infection is resistant to. I could be wrong. I very well could be wrong. But that's what I think.